March 1922. Morning light cuts through dust. A crane operator pulls the lever. The wrecking ball swings. Iron meets limestone. The sound is not dramatic. It is dull, final, like a door closing on a century. The house crumbles in sections. First the north wall. Then the conservatory with its 40-foot glass dome, the dome where 400 guests once danced beneath palms and electric light, where the air smelled of orchids and champagne. Now just shards catching sun. The Pullman Mansion, 1729 South Prairie Avenue, 70 feet by 108 feet of Indiana limestone, 7,000 square feet per floor, 3 stories, cost to build $500,000. Time to erase 1 week. George Pullman paid $500 per square foot for this land in 1873, the highest price ever paid for residential property in Chicago. He built a palace. He filled it with art. He wired it for electric light when electricity was still magic. Newspaper writers called his drawing room more beautiful than the gardens of Kashmir. 46 years later, his widow dies in California. 1 year after that, the house dies in Chicago. The demolition crew works without ceremony. Wheelbarrows carry out rubble. Trucks haul away stone that crossed half a continent to be here. By afternoon, you can see through to the back courtyard where the fountain stood. By week's end, the lot is empty. This is not arson, not earthquake, not fire. This is choice. The Pullman family chose demolition over preservation. The market agreed. No buyer wanted a mansion this size, this expensive, this tied to a past Chicago no longer claimed. And this raises a question that will haunt this street for decades. How does the most expensive street west of Fifth Avenue become a parking lot? Beautiful. Yes, but beauty, it turns out, is no protection against arithmetic. October 8th, 1871, 9 o'clock at night. A barn catches fire on the city's west side. The legend will later blame a cow. The truth is simpler. Chicago is a tinderbox. Wooden buildings, wooden sidewalks, wooden everything. The summer has been dry. The wind is strong from the southwest. By midnight, the fire has jumped the Chicago River. By dawn on October 9th, the north side is burning. The downtown business district, the heart of Chicago's commercial power, is burning. The flames consume Michigan Avenue and Wabash Avenue south of Jackson Boulevard, where the city's wealthy have built their first generation of mansions. 300 people will die. 100,000 will lose their homes. 17,500 buildings will be reduced to ash. The fire burns for 2 days. When it finally exhausts itself on October 10th, Chicago has a hole where its center used to be. But the fire stops before it reaches Prairie Avenue. Stand at 18th Street and Prairie Avenue in October of 1871, and you can see the smoke to the north. You can smell it, but the flames never arrive. Geography saves this street. The wind blows northeast. Prairie Avenue sits southeast. The fire bypasses it completely, and that changes everything. Before the fire, Prairie Avenue is a pleasant residential street, wide, tree-lined, named for the prairie that once stretched west from Lake Michigan all the way to the horizon. The street follows an old Native American trail that connected Fort Dearborn at the mouth of the Chicago River to Fort Wayne in Indiana. In 1812, this trail witnessed violence, the Battle of Fort Dearborn, where Potawatomi warriors ambushed retreating American soldiers at approximately 18th and Prairie. 90 soldiers and settlers marched south hoping for safety. 53 died within 15 minutes. 60 years later, a different battle begins. This one is quieter, wealthier, and it will last longer. After the fire destroys downtown and the North Side, Chicago's business district expands south. The elegant homes on Michigan and Wabash, the addresses that mattered before the fire, are gone. The families who lived there need new ground. They look at Prairie Avenue and see advantages. First, proximity. Prairie Avenue sits less than 1 mile south of the Loop, a brisk walk, a short carriage ride. For men who run businesses that operate on speed commodity trading, retail, railroads, minutes matter. Second, the river. Chicago is cut in two by the Chicago River, which flows backward after engineers reverse it in 1865. The North Side and South Side are connected by bridges, and bridges are bottlenecks, traffic jams, delays, frustration. Prairie Avenue offers something rare: access to downtown without crossing the river. You leave your mansion, you walk north, you arrive at your office. No bridge, no wait. This geography becomes destiny. In 1870, 1 year before the fire, a man named Daniel Thompson builds the first statement. His house at 1936 South Prairie Avenue costs $100,000. This is extraordinary. No one on Chicago's South Side has built a six-figure house before. The message is intentional. This street is where money lives. Then the fire burns the North Side, and the Trinity arrives. George Mortimer Pullman, born 1831 in Brockton, New York, made his fortune on the idea that people would pay for comfort. Before Pullman, train travel meant wooden benches and sleepless nights. Pullman invented the sleeping car, a railroad car with beds, curtains, and service. Luxury on rails. The Pullman Palace Car Company becomes one of America's industrial giants. In 1873, 2 years after the fire, Pullman decides to build on Prairie Avenue. He purchases the northeast corner of Prairie and 18th Street. The price he pays, $500 per square foot. This is not a typo. $500 per square foot in 1873. The highest price ever paid for residential land in Chicago up to that moment. Pullman is making a statement. He is willing to pay any price to live here. Construction begins in 1873. The architect is Henry Jaffray, though Solon Beeman will later expand the house in 1890. The dimensions 70 feet by 108 feet, 3 stories, more than 7,000 square feet per floor. The exterior is limestone and brick. The interiors will eventually include a 200-seat private theater, a billiard room, a bowling alley, and a conservatory topped with a 40-foot leaded glass dome. The house is completed in 1876, cost somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000. In today's currency, roughly 10 to 14 million. This is not a home. This is a declaration. Marshall Field, born 1834 in Conway, Massachusetts, arrives in Chicago in 1856 with no money and sharp instincts. He works in dry goods. He learns retail. He understands something his competitors do not: presentation matters. Display matters. Customer experience matters. By the 1870s, his store, Marshall Field and Company, dominates State Street. Field builds his Prairie Avenue mansion at 1905 South Prairie. Completion date, 1876, the same year as Pullman's house. The architect is Richard Morris Hunt, the first American trained at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. Hunt will later design the breakers in Newport for the Vanderbilts. For Field, he creates something equally grand. The cost, $2 million. In 1876, roughly $58 million today. The house is the first in Chicago completely wired for electricity. This claim requires scrutiny. Thomas Edison does not invent the practical incandescent bulb, until 1879. The wiring likely refers to a later retrofit in the 1880s, or perhaps experimental arc lighting. Regardless, Field is an early adopter. The message is the same. This house is modern. This house is the future. $2 million. Think about what that means in 1876. No income tax, no regulations, no building codes, just craftsmen building to your specifications and money moving from your account to theirs until the work is done. Field's mansion has ornamental plaster, carved oak, marble fireplaces, stained glass, parquet floors of rare woods that cost more per square foot than some families earn in a year. And it is not just the house, it is the operation. Maintaining a mansion of this scale requires an army. Butlers, footmen, maids, cooks, laundresses, gardeners, coachmen. The staff does not live in the neighborhood. They live in the house. Basement rooms, attic quarters, narrow service stairs that keep them invisible. Each servant earns approximately $5 per week, roughly $260 per year. That is $8,500 in today's currency. For 14-hour days, 6 days a week, no vacation, no sick leave, no privacy. But they have a job. And in 1870s Chicago, that matters. Philip Danforth Armour, born 1832 in Stockbridge, New York. He tries gold mining in California and learns that miners need supplies more than they need gold. He moves into the provision business. Eventually, he enters meatpacking. The Union stockyards open in Chicago in 1865. Armour sees the future refrigeration, railroads, and mass production can turn pigs and cattle into industrial-scale profit. By 1877, Armour is wealthy enough to join Field and Pullman on Prairie Avenue. When he arrives, Chicago's 3 wealthiest citizens live within a 4-block stretch. This concentration of wealth is unprecedented in American cities. Together, the 3 men, Field, Pullman, Armour, are known as the Trinity of Chicago business. They are close friends, or at least as close as men this competitive can be. Pullman and Field walk to their offices together most mornings, discussing investments and civic affairs. Armour joins them for dinners. The families visit each other's homes. Their combined wealth in 1877 is already staggering. By 1887, it will reach $50 million. That is roughly $1.5 billion today, held by 3 men, living on one street, within shouting distance of each other. This is what power looks like when it concentrates. But wealth this dense creates gravity. It pulls. Architects arrive to design mansions. Servants arrive to run them. Other wealthy families arrive because proximity to Field, Pullman, and Armour confers status. Suppliers arrive because money this large generates orders. Politicians arrive because decisions made in these drawing rooms shape Chicago's future. Everything is pulled toward Prairie Avenue, including, eventually, the darkness. But that comes later. In 1877, the street is still rising. The mansions are new. The lawns are manicured. The future seems limitless. The question forming unspoken, unanswered, is simple. How long can paradise hold? By 1887, 10 years after Philip Armour joins Marshall Field and George Pullman on Prairie Avenue, the combined wealth of the street's residents reaches $50 million. That is roughly $1.5 billion today, concentrated in 6 blocks, between 16th Street and 22nd Street. The nickname arrives organically, Millionaire's Row. This is not hyperbole. This is arithmetic. Count the mansions. Nearly 90 houses line the prime blocks. Count the millionaires. In 1893, when the world's Columbian Exposition opens, a contemporary writer named Everett Chamberlain walks Prairie Avenue with a notebook. He counts 77 millionaires living between 16th and 22nd Streets alone. 77. In 6 blocks. This density of wealth has no precedent in American cities. Not in New York, not in Philadelphia, not in Boston. Chicago's Prairie Avenue holds the record. And the wealth attracts what wealth always attracts architects. Richard Morris Hunt designs for Marshall Field. Hunt is America's first architect trained at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. He understands proportion, ornament, and how to make a building announce power before you step inside. For the Vanderbilts, he will design the Breakers in Newport, a 70-room Italian Renaissance palace overlooking the Atlantic. For Field, he creates something equally grand but distinctly urban, a mansion that says Chicago has arrived. Henry Hobson Richardson arrives in 1885 to design a house for John Jacob Glessner, a farm machinery manufacturer. Richardson is at the height of his career. He has developed a style later called Richardsonian Romanesque that combines medieval mass with American innovation. Heavy rusticated stone, round arches, interiors that flow in ways Victorian houses never flow. For the Glessners, Richardson designed something radical. Most Prairie Avenue mansions face the street with ornate facades. Look at me, they say, admire my wealth. Richardson turns the Glessner house inward. The street-facing walls are nearly blank pink granite, small windows, fortress-like. Inside, the house opens to a sunny south-facing courtyard. The family rooms overlook this private, green space, not the public street. The design appalls some neighbors. George Pullman reportedly says, "I don't know what I have ever done to have that thing staring me in the face every time I go out my door." But other neighbors understand. The Glessner house is architecture's idea. It is proto-modern. It influences Louis Sullivan. It influences a young draftsman named Frank Lloyd Wright, working in a nearby office. Decades later, Mies van der Rohe will study it. Richardson completes the design in 1886. He dies on April 26th of that year, kidney disease, age 47, while construction continues. The house is finished in December 1887, over 17,000 square feet. Illinois Dolomite Foundation. Braggville pink granite walls, 8 to 10 inches thick, concealing structural brick. Richardson had said, or his associates report he said, that of all the dwellings his firm designed, the Glessner house was the one he would have most wanted to live in himself. The house still stands. In 1976, it becomes a National Historic Landmark. Daniel Burnham and John Root receive nearly a dozen commissions on Prairie Avenue, beginning with the John Sherman House at 2100 South Prairie. Burnham will later plan the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893 and design the 1909 Plan of Chicago that shapes the city's future. But in the 1880s, he is building for the families who can afford his vision. Solon Spencer Beeman becomes Pullman's preferred architect. Beeman designs the entire town of Pullman, the model industrial community south of the city, where Pullman's workers live in company-owned houses, shop in company-owned stores, and attend a company-owned church. For Pullman's Prairie Avenue mansion, Beeman designs the 1892 expansion, more than $3 million in today's currency, added for daughter Harriet's wedding, a new library, a billiard room, a palm room with a 40-foot leaded glass dome, outdoor terraces, an enlarged coach house. Beeman also designs the Marshall Field Jr. Mansion at 1919 South Prairie in 1883. Field Sr. purchases it for his son in 1890 for $65,000. The house contains 43 rooms, 14 fireplaces, 9 bathrooms, and roughly 30,000 square feet. Daniel Burnham later expands it in 1902. In 1892, Beeman completes the William Kimball Mansion at 1801 South Prairie. Kimball made his fortune manufacturing pianos and organs. His house is French chateau-esque, inspired by the 12th century Château du Josselin in Brittany. 3 stories, Bedford limestone, slate mansard roof, steeply sloping roof lines, dormer windows, tall chimneys, cost $1 million. It is added to the National Register in 1971. These are not homes. These are statements carved in stone. But beauty, this grand, demands infrastructure most people never see. Each major mansion employs well over 100 people. The staff breakdown is consistent across households: a butler, a second man, a cook, a laundress, multiple maids, 2 gardeners, a coachman, a groom, plus nurses and governesses if there are children. For heating and electricity where it exists, engineers and maintenance workers. The wages are precise, approximately $5 per week per servant. That is $260 per year. In today's currency, roughly $8,500 annually. For 14-hour days, 6 days a week, no vacation, no sick leave. The staff origins tell their own story. Butlers and coachmen are often English prestige, requires the accent. Pullman employs some formerly enslaved men as coachmen. Most maids are Irish immigrants, fleeing famine and poverty at home, finding 14-hour days in America. Some stay for decades, becoming what the families call lifelong members of an extended family circle. The families see loyalty. The arithmetic sees dependence. Every morning, before the millionaire's wake, the machinery starts. Servants climb narrow service stairs painted institutional green. They stoke fires in the furnaces. Coal has been delivered by the carload, tons of it. Because heating a mansion with 70-foot ceilings through a Chicago winter requires industrial quantities of fuel. The fires must be lit before dawn, so the radiators warm before anyone wakes. The servants scrub. Every fireplace produces soot. Pullman's mansion has 65 fireplaces. Each needs cleaning. The silver needs polishing candlesticks, serving platters, utensils. The linens need washing sheets, tablecloths, napkins, towels. The meals need preparing breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus tea service, plus food for the staff. And the servants must remain invisible. Service staircases keep them separate from family spaces. They enter rooms, perform tasks, and exit before being noticed. The ideal servant is the one you never see, but whose work is everywhere evident. Some contemporary sources describe this arrangement with warmth. The families were kind. The servants were happy. They became like family. Other sources describe reality, complete dependence. No privacy. Servants live in basement rooms or attic quarters. No autonomy, every moment scheduled. No alternative: lose this job, and the next might be worse, if it exists at all. The contrast is architectural. The public spaces, entrance halls, drawing rooms, libraries feature marble, carved oak, stained glass, parquet floors. The service spaces, basement, back stairs. Servant quarters feature painted pine, bare bulbs, narrow passages, small windows, or none. Both are required for the system to function. And the system works. The parties are legendary. New Year's Day, 1886. Marshall and Anna Field decide their annual Christmas party has become too predictable. Their children, Marshall Jr. and Ethel, are teenagers now. Something more sophisticated is required. The theme, The Mikado, the Gilbert and Sullivan operetta that premiered in 1885 and became a sensation. Field commissions, Sherry's New York's most extravagant and expensive caterer, to send 2 railroad cars loaded with rare food, china, silver services, and table linens to Chicago. Sets are borrowed from New York's Fifth Avenue Theater. The Field Mansion is transformed into Japanese fantasy. The Chicago Tribune sends a reporter. The description, published the next day, is breathless. Such a bewildering mass of rich and costly stuffs that no detailed description is possible. 4 blocks south, George Pullman entertains on a different scale. His standard guest count 400 people. His drawing room, ivory and gold, 6 vast mirrors, is described by the Tribune as surpassing any room of its kind in Chicago, whether public or private. Newspaper accounts say the house is forever ablaze with party lights. Think about what 400 guests require. 400 coats taken, 400 chairs arranged, 400 plates served, 400 glasses poured, 400 conversations managed. The staff required for an event of this scale is enormous. And the cost catering, flowers, music, lighting runs into thousands of dollars per evening. But cost is not the point. Display is the point. By 1893, Prairie Avenue has become a tourist attraction. The world's Columbian Exposition, Chicago's bid to prove itself as a global city, opens in May. 27 million people visit over 6 months. Guidebooks list Prairie Avenue as a must-see. Rand McNally publishes a description. That remarkable street is home to merchants whose business affects every mart on the earth, and who possess wealth that at last aroused the jealousy of New York. The most expensive street west of Fifth Avenue. That was 1893. At least 40 of the 60 members of the Commercial Club, the group that will later commission Daniel Burnham's 1909 Plan of Chicago, live on Prairie Avenue in 1893. The street is not just where the wealthy live. It is where decisions are made, where civic direction is set, where power concentrates. And when power concentrates, it attracts more architects, more mansions, more families who want proximity to field, Pullman, armor, more servants who need work, more suppliers who want contracts. Everything flows toward Prairie Avenue. But 4 blocks west, in June of 1893, while the World's Fair celebrates Chicago's arrival, another kind of establishment is opening for business. The Levee District, brothels, saloons, gambling halls, 2,000 of them packed into the blocks between 18th and 22nd Streets, the same latitude as Paradise, just 4 blocks west, close enough to walk, close enough to smell, close enough to ruin everything. May 1893. The World's Columbian Exposition opens in Jackson Park on Chicago's South Side. The White City, they call it, gleaming neoclassical buildings designed by Daniel Burnham and a team of architects, electric lights everywhere, a technology still rare enough to inspire wonder. The Ferris wheel, the first one, designed by George Washington Gale, Ferris Jr. as America's answer to Paris's Eiffel Tower, rises 264 feet. Over 6 months, 27 million people visit. More than the entire population of the United States at the time. They come from every state, from Europe, from Asia. They come to see what Chicago has built. They come to witness American ambition made manifest. Prairie Avenue residents see validation. Their city, still rebuilding from the fire 22 years earlier, is now recognized as America's second capital. The Commercial Club members who live on Prairie Avenue helped fund the fair. Their names are in the programs. Their vision shaped the city. But 4 blocks west of Prairie Avenue, entrepreneurs see different opportunity. The levee district explodes. The area has existed before 1893. Vice districts always exist in cities. But the fair brings millions of men with money and time. The district expands to meet demand. By 1895, approximately 2,000 establishments, brothels, saloons, gambling halls pack the blocks between 18th and 22nd Streets, bounded by Wabash Avenue to the east and Clark Street to the west. Same latitude as Prairie Avenue, 4 blocks west. The protection is political. 2 men control the First Ward alderman, Michael Hinky Dink Kenner, and Alderman John Barthouse Coughlin. Starting in 1893, they organize a protection racket, pay money weekly, operate freely. The police look away. The aldermen collect. The system is efficient. Kenner and Coughlin lead a group of corrupt city councillors called the Grey Wolves. They will remain active from 1890 until 1930. 40 years of organized corruption protecting organized vice. The operation is industrial. 2,000 establishments require workers. Most are women. Some come willingly, seeing prostitution as better paid than factory work or domestic service. Others are coerced. Still others are children. Mary Hastings runs the worst operation. She has been trafficking since the late 1880s, gaining experience in Brussels, Paris, Toronto, Denver, Portland, San Francisco before arriving in Chicago in 1888. From 1893 onward, she systematically lures girls aged 13 to 17 from rural Midwest towns. The method is simple. Advertise good-paying jobs in Chicago. When the girls arrive, strip them of their clothes and identification. Rape them with what she calls professional rapists, men employed specifically to break the girls' resistance. Then put them to work. Hastings pays approximately $2 per week to the local police patrol. For $2, she escapes investigation for years. When officers do visit, she offers services instead of money. Either way, she operates without interruption. One brothel operator will later say of Hastings, if a girl was good enough to be accepted at ordinary brothel, then she was too good for her own. This is 4 blocks from Prairie Avenue. In 1897 and 1898, Harper's Weekly sends a reporter to investigate Chicago vice. He walks the levee and returns with horror. His report, block after block of low dives in the heart of the city, in what is known as the Levee District, where thieves and thugs and persons of revolting character passed in and out, the like of which the Bowery, in the heyday of its prosperity, never saw. He compares Chicago to New York and finds New York cleaner. New York's Tenderloin never reduced open lawlessness so flagrant or immorality so bold as exists at present in Chicago. 4 blocks from where Marshall Field plans his retail empire. 4 blocks from where George Pullman designs railroad cars. 4 blocks from where commercial club members meet to plan Chicago's future. Close enough to walk. Close enough to smell. Close enough to contaminate. But not all levee establishments are equal. In February 1900, 2 sisters, Ada and Minna Everly, open a different class of operation at 2133 South Dearborn Street, the Everly Club. This is high-end prostitution, gourmet food, live music performed by small orchestras, a gold piano in the music room, lavish furnishings, imported carpets, oil paintings, silk draperies. The Everly sisters market discretion and luxury. Their clients are wealthy men who can afford $50 for an evening. In 1900, $50 is a fortune. The club operates for 11 years. In October 1911, Mayor Carter Harrison II orders it closed. Too visible, too notorious. Reform movements are gaining strength. The Everly Club has become a symbol. Ada and Minna retired to New York with over $1 million in cash, jewelry, and stock. They live comfortably for decades. The rumors persist throughout the club's operation. Prairie Avenue residents are clients. Gentlemen walk 4 blocks west after dark. They return before dawn. The discretion is mutual. The Everly sisters never publish client names. The clients never admit attendance. But some secrets are harder to keep. November 27th, 1905. Shortly before 6 o'clock in the evening, Marshall Field Jr. is shot at his mansion at 1919 South Prairie Avenue. The official story arrives quickly. Field was alone in his dressing room. He was cleaning a gun. The weapon discharged accidentally. The bullet entered his left side, tore through his abdomen, perforated his liver, and lodged just beneath the skin on his right rear. Field managed to call for help. Servants heard the shot. Dr. R. H. Harvey from 2100 Calumet Avenue arrived first. Dr. Arthur Bevan from 2917 Michigan Avenue followed. Within half an hour, Field was transported to Mercy Hospital. Dr. Bevan operated. The bullet was extracted, only a slight incision required, but the liver damage was severe, hemorrhaging. Field lingered for days. He died at the hospital. The Chicago Tribune reports Marshall Field Jr., son of the Chicago merchant and capitalist, shot and perhaps fatally wounded himself at his residence. 1919 Prairie Avenue. The Tribune describes the wound. The Tribune quotes the doctors. The Tribune reports the official cause: accidentally self-inflicted gunshot wound while cleaning a gun. The official story has problems. Problem 1. If Field was alone, who heard the gunshot? The Tribune itself reports servants heard a gunshot, and Field managed to call for help. Not alone, then. Problem 2. The wound trajectory. Bullet enters left side, exits right rear. For someone right-handed cleaning a gun, this angle is awkward. Not impossible, but awkward. Problem 3. The speed of response. Field is shot. Within 30 minutes, he is at the hospital. For 1905, this is remarkably fast, almost as if someone anticipated the need. The alternative story, never proven, never disproven, persists for decades. Field was shot at the Everly Club, 4 blocks west. The club had carriages. The club had discretion. The club had reasons to avoid scandal. Field was carried home. The story was arranged. The doctors cooperated. The police cooperated. The newspapers mostly cooperated. Marshall Field Sr. has the power to control this narrative. He owns real estate. He influences banks. His store dominates retail. His name opens doors and closes mouths. The coroner works for the city. The city wants Field's goodwill. The police take orders. The Tribune needs Field's advertising. Can the truth be managed at this level of wealth? Yes. But some truths leak anyway. The rumors start immediately. Whispers, speculation. The Everly Club. 4 blocks. Field's widow Albertine takes their 3 children and flees to England almost immediately after the funeral. She never returns to live in Chicago. The children, including Marshall Field III, born 1893, grow up abroad. Marshall Field Sr. dies 2 months later, January 1906. The Tribune reports natural causes. He was 71. He had been in declining health. The official explanation is plausible. But the distance from his son's mysterious death to his own grave is measured in sleepless nights. 4 months of questions without answers. 4 months of rumors he cannot stop. 4 months of knowing or suspecting or fearing what actually happened 4 blocks west. The contamination spreads. By 1905, The first commercial buildings appear on Indiana Avenue, directly adjacent to Prairie Avenue. The boundary is breached. By 1910, a medical school operates on Prairie Avenue itself. Also in 1910, the Gatlin Institute, a clinic for drug and alcohol addiction treatment, occupies the former Marshall Field Jr. mansion at 1919 South Prairie. The house where Field died, or where his body arrived, is now treating addicts. The symbolism is unsubtle. Publishing companies move into converted mansions. Printing plants rise on adjacent streets. The R. Donnelly and Sons printing facility, designed by Howard Van Doren Shaw, begins construction on Calumet Avenue in 1912. Light industry discovers that Prairie Avenue land is cheap and central. And by 1912, the Levee District is finally shut down. Mayor Harrison orders the brothels closed. The Grey Wolves' protection ends. The district scatters. But by 1912, contemporary accounts state the levee had done irreparable harm to Prairie Avenue's reputation. Irreparable. The word is specific. Not damaged, not tarnished, irreparable, beyond repair. The most expensive street west of Fifth Avenue. That was 1893. 19 years later, irreparably harmed. What happened? Not invasion, not fire, not earthquake. The mansions still stand. The families still live there. The servants still polish silver. But something has shifted. Reputation is a fragile thing. It is built slowly, decades of careful display, of architect selection, of party hosting, of wealth demonstration. And it is destroyed quickly. 4 blocks of brothels. One mysterious death. One family fleeing to England. The question forming, unspoken but everywhere present. If Prairie Avenue cannot protect itself from contamination 4 blocks away, what else can it not protect against? Before the levee contaminated Prairie Avenue, before Marshall Field Jr. died mysteriously in 1905, before the reputation became irreparable, the exit already existed. 1882. Potter Palmer hotel magnate. Real estate developer looks at Lakeshore Drive and sees what others miss. The land is swampy, undeveloped. The shore is raw. No one of means lives there. Most consider it undesirable. Palmer builds anyway. His mansion rises like a medieval castle transplanted to Chicago. Towers, turrets, crenellations. The cost $1 million. At the time, this is an extraordinary sum even for someone of Palmer's wealth. But Palmer is not building a house. He is building a statement. He is opening territory. His wife, Bertha Honoré Palmer, is formidable, beautiful, connected, ambitious. She becomes Chicago's reigning society queen, rivaled only by Delia Spencer Caton, who will later marry the widowed Marshall Field Sr. in 1905. Where Bertha goes, Chicago society follows. The North Side, Gold Coast, is born. The message is immediate. There are alternatives to Prairie Avenue. This matters. For 15 years, Prairie Avenue has been the only address that signifies arrival. Field, Pullman, Armour, the Trinity have anchored it. Everyone else clusters nearby, hoping proximity confers status. But Palmer proves you can create a new elite neighborhood from nothing. Just build something grand. Bring your wife's social power. Wait. And the timing is important. Palmer opens the Gold Coast in 1882, 11 years before the levee explodes, 11 years before Mary Hastings starts trafficking girls, 23 years before Field Jr. dies. Palmer does not flee contamination. He creates an alternative before contamination exists. But once the alternative exists, it becomes an option. And once people have options, they start weighing costs. Prairie Avenue's costs are mounting. Transportation changes. The Illinois Central Railroad expands service. Trains run close to Prairie Avenue, convenient for those commuting downtown. Unbearable for those living beside the tracks. The noise, the smoke, the vibration. Steam engines are not quiet neighbors. Then the elevated trains arrive. The L system spreads across Chicago, electric-powered, faster than surface transport. More noise, more infrastructure cutting through neighborhoods. The very technologies that built Chicago's wealth make Chicago harder to live in. Meanwhile, the automobile arrives. Henry Ford will not introduce the Model T until 1908, but wealthy Chicagoans adopt motorcars earlier. Suddenly, distance means less. No longer necessary to live within walking distance of the loop. You can drive. You can live 5 miles out, 10 miles. The geographic tyranny that created Prairie Avenue proximity without river crossing dissolves, and the alternatives multiply. North Lakeshore Drive offers lake views, clean air, distance from industry. The Gold Coast, with Palmer's endorsement, becomes fashionable. Astor Street, nearby, attracts wealth. By 1911, the Chicago Tribune is calling suburban Lake Forest Millionaire's Row. Even on the south side, Kenwood, farther south, away from downtown, an industry becomes desirable. And then there are the apartment buildings. This is subtle. This is about modernity offering relief. A mansion requires management. 100 servants, coal deliveries, maintenance, repairs, wages every week, groceries, furnishings. The machinery never stops. The costs never stop. Even for millionaires. This is exhausting. An apartment building offers different arithmetic. Central heating, the building's boiler handles it. Janitorial service, the building's staff handles it. Elevators, the building provides them. You live in luxury without managing an army. You pay monthly rent or building fees. Someone else handles logistics. For the second generation, the children who grew up in Prairie Avenue mansions, this is appealing. They inherit wealth but not necessarily the desire to run industrial-scale households. Apartments offer escape from that obligation. Modernity offers relief. And relief, it turns out, has value. But there is another pressure. Industrial encroachment. 1912. R. Donnelly and Sons. A major printing company begins construction of a massive printing plant on Calumet Avenue. Calumet runs parallel to Prairie Avenue, 1 block west. The architect is Howard Van Doren Shaw, a respected name. The building is well designed, but it is still a factory. Industrial scale, printing presses, loading docks, truck traffic, workers arriving for shifts, a factory, 1 block from where George Pullman's mansion stood, 1 block from where Marshall Field built his $2 million statement. The boundary is breached. 1915. The Hump Hairpin Manufacturing Company builds a factory at the location of a former Prairie Avenue residence. This is the first time a factory directly replaces a mansion on Prairie Avenue itself. Not adjacent, not nearby. On the street. The thing that was supposed to be impossible industry replacing elegance happens. Other conversions follow. Mansions become boarding houses, divided into small rooms, rented to workers, clerks, salesmen, no servants, no grandeur, just people who need cheap housing close to jobs. Other mansions become office buildings. Publishing companies move in, printing firms. The rooms that hosted 400 guest parties now contain desks and filing cabinets. In 1909, the Marshall Field Jr. mansion, where Field died or where his body arrived in 1905, is purchased by Dr. Milton B. Pine. Pine converts it to the Gatlin Institute, a clinic for drug and alcohol addiction treatment. The house where Chicago's wealthiest heir died becomes a place where people go to stop dying slowly. The symbolism is almost too obvious, but no one remarks on it. Or perhaps everyone understands it so clearly that remarks are unnecessary. And in 1905, the last new mansion is built on Prairie Avenue, 2126 South Prairie, 3 stories, Georgian Revival style, 21 rooms. It is the final statement. For the next century, for the next 100 years, no one will build a new mansion on this street. The only construction from this point forward will be demolition. Why? Perhaps the answer lies in what happened to George Pullman. May 11th through July 20th, 1894. The Pullman strike. George Pullman owns a company town south of Chicago. He built it with Solon Beeman as architect, the same Beeman who designed and expanded his Prairie Avenue mansion. The town has worker housing, shops, a church, a library, parks, everything company owned. Workers rent houses from Pullman. They buy goods from Pullman stores. They worship in Pullman's church. Pullman believes this is benevolent. He is providing order, stability, culture. Workers should be grateful. In 1893, an economic depression begins. Pullman's company loses orders. Revenue falls. Pullman cuts worker wages 25 to 40%. But he does not reduce rents in the company town. He does not reduce prices in company stores. Workers are caught. Less money, same costs, desperation. They ask Pullman to negotiate. He refuses, point blank. In May 1894, workers strike. The American Railway Union, led by Eugene Debs, supports them. The strike spreads. Railroad traffic nationwide halts. The economy seizes. President Grover Cleveland sends 12,000 federal troops to break the strike. Violence erupts. Over 30 workers are killed. The strike collapses. Debs goes to prison. Pullman wins. But winning costs him everything else. He becomes the most hated man in America. Newspapers excoriate him. Clergy condemn him. Former friends distance themselves. Public opinion, which once celebrated his innovations, now sees him as a tyrant. One worker reportedly says, "We are born in a Pullman house, fed from the Pullman shops, taught in the Pullman school, catechized in the Pullman church, and when we die, we shall go to the Pullman hell." 3 years later, in 1897, George Pullman suffers a massive heart attack. He is 66. He dies. His family fears grave desecration. They believe former workers and strike supporters will dig up his body, desecrate it. The fear is so intense that the funeral becomes a construction project. Pullman's body is placed in a lead-lined mahogany coffin. The coffin is encased in concrete. That is buried beneath more concrete. The process takes 2 days to complete. Even in death, Pullman needs walls. Even in death, he cannot trust the people whose labor built his wealth. The distance from visionary industrialist to pariah, 3 years and 1 strike. Maybe the rich learned something. Maybe they learned that concentrations of wealth create targets. A street where 77 millionaires live within 6 blocks is visible, conspicuous. A mansion costing $2 million invites attention. When that attention turns angry when strikes happen, when depressions hit, when workers starve while mansions glow with party lights, the visibility becomes vulnerability. Maybe they learned that paradise, once seen, invites envy, and envy, given time, finds weapons. Maybe they learned to spread out, to build in suburbs where property is larger and neighbors are fewer, to live in apartment buildings where anonymity is possible, to avoid creating another Prairie Avenue, and the real estate values confirm it. According to 100 Years of Land Values in Chicago, a comprehensive study of property valuation, Prairie Avenue reached its peak around 1890. After 1900, values decline steadily. Not collapse, not crash, just steady, relentless decline. By 1911, warehouses and factories cramped the Prairie Avenue district. That phrasing, cramp, is telling. The mansions are still there, but they are surrounded, enclosed, suffocated by industry. The Rand McNally guidebook that praised Prairie Avenue in 1893 as rivaling Fifth Avenue goes silent. No updates, no revisions, just silence. By 1920, the exodus is complete. The children who grew up on Prairie Avenue, Marshall, Field III, Florence Pullman, Loudon, the Armour heirs live elsewhere, some in England, some in suburban estates, some in Gold Coast apartments. They visit their childhood street rarely, some never return. The mansions stand half empty, servants' quarters go dark, coal deliveries slow, the parties stop. The electric lights that once blazed all night now illuminate nothing. And then the demolition crews arrive. Not invaders, not arsonists, not a second Chicago fire. Just businessmen with wrecking balls and simple arithmetic. The land is worth more than the house. A parking lot generates income. A warehouse generates income. A factory generates income. A mansion built to last 1,000 years generates nothing but cost. Beautiful. Yes, but beauty is expensive. And Chicago has stopped paying. Harriet Pullman dies in Pasadena, California in 1921. Pneumonia. She is 82 years old. For 24 years since George's death in 1897, she has lived part of each year in the mansion at 1729 South Prairie. The house that cost $500,000 to build. The house with the 200-seat theater and the 40-foot glass dome. The house that was forever ablaze with party lights. Now it is empty. November 1921. The family holds a 3-day auction. Furnishings, art, artifacts accumulated over 45 years. The children Florence Pullman Loudon and Harriet Pullman Carolyn take what they want. Strangers buy the rest. Carved chairs, oil paintings, silver services, crystal chandeliers, the palm room's furniture, the theater's seats. Everything removable is removed. Then, in 1922, the wrecking crews arrive. The house that took 3 years to build is demolished in 1 week. Limestone blocks that traveled from Indiana quarries. Woodwork carved by craftsmen. Plaster molded by hand. Glass imported from Europe. All reduced to rubble, loaded into trucks, hauled away. The family's stated reason: no market. No buyer wants a mansion this size, this expensive, this tied to a past Chicago no longer claims. Better to tear it down than watch it abused with expansion of the Levee District. The lot stands empty. Today, it holds modern townhouses and a condominium tower. No marker, no plaque, nothing that says, here stood the grandest house in Chicago. George Pullman paid $500 per square foot for this land. His drawing room was called more beautiful than the gardens of Kashmir. Nothing, just addresses. 1729 South Prairie Avenue now refers to structures that did not exist when Pullman lived. And 33 years later, another mansion falls, March 2nd, 1955. The Chicago Tribune headline, 79-year-old Marshall Field Mansion at 1905 Prairie Avenue, built 79 years ago, and the first Chicago house to have electricity, had all but disappeared yesterday. Built to last 1,000 years, the Tribune notes. Lasted 79. The Speedway Wrecking Company swings the ball. The house that cost $2 million in 1876 crumbles. The Tribune sends a reporter to document what is being lost. He describes what he sees: its circular walnut staircase, painted but in flawless condition. Its parquet floors of rare woods cost a fortune. The green marble fireplace was another of the mansion's marvels. Flawless condition, not deteriorating, not damaged, not unsafe, just obsolete. The site will be cleared in a few more days, the Tribune reports, and it is. By March 10th, the lot is empty, ready for whatever comes next. Where are the children? Where are the heirs? Marshall Field, the third born. 1893 in the Field Junior Mansion. At 1919, South Prairie is 62 years old. In 1955, he grew up on Prairie Avenue until his father's mysterious death in 1905. His mother, Albertine, fled to England with him and his siblings immediately after the funeral. They never returned to live in Chicago. Field III came back as an adult. He founded the Chicago Sun in 1941, a liberal newspaper opposing the Tribune. He is a major publisher, a wealthy man, a figure of influence. His grandfather's mansion, the house where his father was born, where his grandmother lived, where parties once glowed, is demolished while Field III lives and works in Chicago. Did he drive past the wrecking ball? Did he stand across the street and watch? Did he feel anything? No record exists. He never said, 1 year later, in 1956, Marshall Field III dies. Whatever he thought about the demolition of his family's monuments, he takes with him. And this pattern repeats. Florence Pullman Loudon, George and Harriet's daughter, is 51 in 1922 when her childhood home is demolished. Her husband, Frank Loudon, is governor of Illinois from 1917 to 1921. She is wealthy, connected, influential. Her father's mansion becomes rubble. No record shows she objected. No record shows she tried to save it. Perhaps she approved. Perhaps she did not care. Perhaps she wanted to forget. The children flee. The mansions stay. And the city tears them down. The arithmetic is merciless. Built approximately 90 mansions between 1870 and 1905. The 6 prime blocks from 16th to 22nd Streets, peak 77 millionaires counted by Everett Chamberlain in 1893. The most expensive street west of Fifth Avenue, survived to 1966, 7 houses, demolished 83 mansions, destruction rate 92% erased. Time frame. From peak in 1893 to near obliteration in 1966 equals 73 years. Most demolitions occur between 1920 and 1950. 30 years of systematic destruction. The reasons vary. Some houses have no buyers, too large, too expensive to heat, too costly to maintain. The math is simple. A mansion requires an army of servants. Servants require wages. Heating requires tons of coal. Maintenance requires constant attention. For what? For a house nobody wants to live in anymore. Some are too damaged. Years of neglect, roofs leaking, plaster cracking, foundations settling, cost too much to repair. Cheaper to demolish and start over. Some simply stand in the way. The land is valuable. Central location, close to downtown. A parking lot generates income without costing anything. A warehouse stores goods. A factory produces products. A mansion produces nothing but expenses. And some are converted rather than demolished. Boarding houses. The grand ballrooms divided into small rooms. $10 a week rentals for clerks and shop workers. Office buildings. The drawing rooms filled with desks. The libraries stacked with file cabinets. By 1966, the street that once glowed with electric light and echoed with parties looks like an industrial zone with architectural accidents. 7 houses remain. The Glessner House at 1800 South Prairie. Henry Hobson Richardson's masterwork. Completed December 1887. Over 17,000 square feet. Empty in 1966. Threatened with demolition. The Kimball House at 1801 South Prairie. Solon Beeman's French chateauesque fantasy. Built 1890 to 1892. Cost $1 million. Converted to offices. The Coleman Ames House at 1811 South Prairie. Mid-1880s. Also offices now. The Marshall Field Junior Mansion at 1919 South Prairie. 43 rooms, 14 fireplaces, 9 bathrooms, deteriorating. The Keith House, 1870, barely standing. 3 row houses on Cullerton Street. Modest compared to the mansions. Survivors by virtue of being less grand, less visible, less targeted. And the Clark House, Chicago's oldest standing building, built 1836, relocated twice, now at a different address but associated with the district. 7 houses out of 90. 7% survival rate. What replaced the other 83 parking lots? Warehouses, factories, office buildings, light industry, vacant lots waiting for development. The street that Rand McNally called home to merchants whose business affects every mart on the earth, now looks like a district where businesses move to save on rent. By the 1970s, most residential buildings are replaced by factories and parking lots. The neighborhood is industrial. The remaining houses are anomalies, architectural accidents that somehow escaped the wrecking ball. But why? Why did these 7 survive when 83 did not? Not because they were more beautiful. The Pullman mansion was more beautiful. Not because they cost less to maintain. The Field mansion was in flawless condition when it fell. They survived because in 1966, something changed. Someone noticed. Someone cared. Someone said, stop. But that comes next. For now, the count stands. 90 built. 83 demolished. 7 remaining. And those 7, in 1966, have no protection, no legal status, no guarantee. The Glessner House is scheduled for demolition. The others could follow at any moment. The question in 1966, will Chicago save any witnesses to what it built, or will it erase the last 7 and complete the forgetting? 1966. The Glessner House at 1800 South Prairie Avenue stands empty. 79 years old. Over 17,000 square feet. Henry Hobson Richardson's masterwork, the house he said he most wanted to live in. The house that influenced Louis Sullivan, Frank Lloyd Wright, Mies van der Rohe. The house that proved American architecture could be idea, not just ornament, scheduled for demolition. A group of architects hears about this. They understand what is at stake. Phyllis Lambert, Canadian architect and heiress who saved Grand Central Terminal in New York. Philip Johnson, already famous, already influential. Dirk Loewen Mies van der Rohe's grandson. Ben Wies and Harry Wies brothers, both architects working in Chicago. They pool resources. They negotiate. They purchase the Glessner House for $35,000. $35,000. For 17,000 square feet of National Historic Landmark quality architecture. For Richardson's vision made stone. For the last intact Richardson urban residence in America. The price seems absurd. Not because it is too high, because it is too low. What does it say about Chicago in 1966 that this building, this masterpiece, can be purchased for less than the cost of a suburban ranch house? But the architects do not ask that question. They pay. They save it. And then they do something more important. They create an organization to protect it permanently. The Chicago School of Architecture Foundation later renamed the Chicago Architecture Foundation. Founded specifically to save one house, one building, this one. The effect is immediate. The Glessner House becomes a museum. Tours begin. People walk through Richardson's spaces. They see how the fortress exterior conceals sun-filled rooms, how the layout flows, how every detail doorknobs, hinges, light fixtures is designed as part of a whole. They understand, some for the first time, what was lost, what is still being lost. But the demolitions do not stop immediately. Between 1966 and 1969, 3 more neighboring houses fall. The Glessner House stands. Its neighbors vanish. The lesson is clear. One house saved does not save a street. Protection requires more. Discussions begin about formal recognition. The city starts paying attention. Preservation movements are gaining strength nationally. In 1966, Congress passes the National Historic Preservation Act. The National Register of Historic Places becomes official. For the first time, there is federal machinery to recognize and protect historic sites. Prairie Avenue applies. November 15, 1972. The Prairie Avenue Historic District is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The boundaries, the 1800 and 1900 blocks of South Prairie Avenue, the 1800 block of South Indiana Avenue, and 211 through 217 East Cullerton Street. Everything remaining. Everything that survived. January 7, 1976. The Glessner House itself receives higher recognition, National Historic Landmark status. Not just historic, nationally significant. One of the most important 19th century residences in America. Richardson's masterwork, proto-modern architecture, education by example. December 27, 1979. The City of Chicago grants Chicago Landmark designation to the Prairie Avenue Historic District. Now the protection is triple layered. Federal recognition, national landmark status, city protection. No one can demolish these buildings without facing legal barriers. The 7 survivors are safe. Finally, after 90 years of construction, 50 years of demolition, 46 years from Pullman's house falling to legal protection arriving. The remaining houses have defenders, but 7 seems insufficient. The district feels empty. Too much open space where mansions stood. Too much absence. So in 1977, the preservationists do something audacious. The Clark House, built 1836, Chicago's oldest standing building, sits miles away on South Wabash Avenue. It was built by Henry B. Clark, a hardware businessman, and his wife Caroline. Originally at 1600 block South Michigan Avenue, moved once in 1872 to avoid demolition, now threatened again. The Chicago Architecture Foundation decides, bring it to Prairie Avenue, add it to the district, create critical mass. Make the story bigger than just the Gilded Age. Show Chicago's full residential history. The problem, the elevated train tracks block the route. The solution, lift the entire house frame construction, 2 stories, 8 rooms over the L tracks at midnight when trains stop running. December 1977. Engineers, cranes, flatbed trucks. The house rises. The house moves. The house lands at 1827 South Indiana Avenue. The Clark House becomes the district's anchor, older than the mansions, built before the fire. A farmhouse from when Prairie Avenue was Prairie. Paired with the Glessner House, Richardson's 1887 modernist masterpiece, the Clark House, shows range, shows depth, shows that preservation is not nostalgia, it is memory, and memory requires witnesses. By 1979, The count stabilizes. 8 houses, the Glessner House and Clark House as museums, the Kimball House and Coleman Ames House, occupied by the United States Soccer Federation. The Marshall Field Junior Mansion converted to 6 condominiums, 43 rooms divided into separate luxury units. The Keith House and Elbridge Keith House as private residences. 3 row houses on Cullerton Street. 8 houses out of 90. Still only 9% survival, but 9% with protection. 9% with purpose. 9% that will not vanish. And something else happens. The Chicago Architecture Foundation grows. What began as 5 architects saving 1 house becomes an organization reshaping how Chicago sees itself. Walking tours, educational programs, advocacy. By the 1980s and 1990s, the foundation is leading preservation battles across the city. Sullivan Buildings, Burnham Buildings, Wright Buildings. The Glessner House rescue becomes the model. 1 house changes everything. The street itself transforms. The factories that replace mansions are demolished or converted to loft condominiums. Deindustrialization makes industrial buildings obsolete. New development fills vacant lots. Modern townhouses, condominium towers. Prairie Avenue even extends north to Grant Park for high-rises, like One Museum Park. The district becomes a mixture. Historic houses protected by law. Modern buildings rising beside them. The contrast is jarring. The 1887 Glessner House Fortress sits beside glass and steel condominiums built in 2005. But the contrast tells truth. The past and present occupy the same space. Neither erases the other. Both exist. Today, the Glessner House Museum operates year-round. Tours run regularly. School groups visit. Researchers study Richardson's drawings. The Clark House tells pre-fire Chicago history. The preserved mansions show what was built, what was lost, what barely survived. The arithmetic is final. 90 mansions built between 1870 and 1905. 77 millionaires counted in 1893. 7 houses survived to 1966. 92% destroyed. And those 7 later 8 with Clark House survived because 5 architects paid $35,000 and said, "Not this one. This one we save." The question was, can one building change a city's mind about its past? The answer, yes. If someone believes $35,000 is a reasonable price for memory, if someone acts before demolition arrives, if someone understands that paradise, once erased, cannot be rebuilt. 83 mansions vanished because no one paid to save them. 7 survived because someone did. The difference between preservation and obliteration, $35,000, and the will to write the check.